Hi, my name is Dr. Sorcha Healy. I'm a principal engineer and I'm a senior data scientist in the office of the CTO. I'm going to tell you a little bit today about McAfee MVISION Insights. Firstly, before I get into the product, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my data journey. It's brought me from designing silicon chips to cloud big data analytics and enhanced protection on your devices. I gained a PhD in semiconductor physics modeling with quantum Monte Carlo methods in 2003. The point of the project was to analyze chemical reaction pathways on the surfaces of silicon chips in order to make the processing more efficient. And that really started my journey in modeling real systems, dealing with real-life problems with code and mathematics. In 2003, I joined the Tyndall National Institute, where I worked with world-renowned researcher in photonic devices, Owen O'Reilly, and we designed real lasers, real optical amplifiers for fiber communications. The code I built and the devices I designed are still used today in cutting-edge research. I came to McAfee in 2014. I was recruited as part of a brand new team to put mathematical research and rigor on the data that underpins MVISION Insights as you know it today. That data is from our Global Threat Intelligence Cloud. The Global Threat Intelligence Cloud answers more than 60 billion customer queries a day, across more than 1 billion devices, across a range of products from mobile to endpoint to cloud. It's a fantastic ecosystem. It's an amazing pleasure to work in, and few data scientists have the privilege to work with such a fascinating real-life data set. In 2019, I led the data science team that brought the Insights POC research to the main stage in our Empower Customer show, where it was demoed by our CTO, Steve Groman. It was so fantastic for a team where we generally work in the back end, fueling the content of your devices day to day. It's really fantastic to bring to you the power of this analytics into a customer-facing product to bring the value of global threat intelligence, global context directly to your local SOC. Let's start with reviewing some of the challenges that we have in the cybersecurity landscape. What are the problems that you have that we are targeting with this solution? Let's see how we've crafted that MVISION Insights solution to bring solutions to these particular problems. The next piece of my demonstration, I'm going to talk to you about our dashboard. I'm going to show you through the detailed information and the little widgets that we've provided in order to guide you through protecting your ecosystem. Lastly, I'm going to review some of the current threat information in the field and some of the current threats that are affecting your ecosystem. Customer engagement is so important to us in McAfee. We put our customers at the core. So after more than 130 face-to-face interviews with different enterprise customers, a lot of consistent themes have emerged. There's a lot of threats out there and a lot of threat information. How do you know which campaigns are in your neighborhood? How do you know whether you have to worry about them? Are they hitting other banks in your region? And when you find that something is relevant to you, it can take your team a long time to figure out where the vulnerabilities are and what changes to your defenses are going to hold. So let's break these apart, these three main SOC threat readiness problems. Firstly, that problem of prioritization of that huge volume of campaigns that are out there in the threat landscape. How do you pick which ones to target and investigate? Having decided the priority of the things that might affect you, how do you then decide what you might be susceptible to? How do you figure out whether your current situation or your current configuration is already enough to protect you? If you've decided that you are vulnerable to this threat, how then do you know exactly what changes to make to your configuration to protect you? The major problem is about bringing that workload before an attack might hit. It's about taking action before you need to block or stop, putting proactively measures in place, bringing the research, the workload of your team, all actions before an attack might hit. If you look on the left-hand side, your attacker has all of that time planning, spreading, launching, then you're breached, and then you have to respond. Threat intelligence feeds, threat intelligence platforms, vulnerability risk management, all the other parts of your current configuration, they don't help you with the piece of the prioritization problem. How to prioritize things to investigate and put in place proactive defenses before an attack might hit you. Most of these solutions only give you the ability to triage, detect, and react to an attack. Let's recap on the main problems, the causes of these problems, and the solutions that can bring a resolution to them. Firstly, the prioritization problem, the deluge of threat intelligence for you to work through. That particular issue is down to a lack of visibility for you in what is currently active in the field, what is active in your geo, what is active in your industry vertical, what do you need to worry about, what is actually impacting you. Is there an IOC that's malicious, but is it part of a greater campaign? Do you need to take further action? If you know that a campaign is in your neighborhood, what is then your problem? Your next problem is whether you need to change your countermeasures. Do you need to further defend? The solution to that is prior experience in the field of other customers that have dealt with these items and putting in place defenses similar that they have already used successfully. The third issue is a prescription. If you know that you need to change your countermeasures, exactly what changes are you going to make that are actually going to help? Prescriptive and preemptive, concrete security actions that have been seen and proved to be effective in the field are what you need in order to mitigate that third problem. Let's review the McAfee threat intelligence, global threat intelligence, but with local context. Let's take a moment and review the landscape. If you've got an adversary and threats on the left, and you've got your customer on the right, and you've got all of our defenses, on the greater part, these defenses are going to hold. However, we have 1 billion sensors that are seeing these campaigns and threats in the field. We can see how other customer defenses are configured. We can see what defenses are holding. We can see what defenses are not holding. We have researchers who can tell you how this attack works and how to mitigate against the attack. The diversity of the sensor telemetry that we've got is critical, and it's really staggering to look out across our portfolio and see all the knowledge we can glean from device to cloud. We have on-prem the ability to look at EPP and EDR. We can look at detailed telemetry of what happened on the device, how things behaved, what actions were taken on what devices. This is, of course, across multiple operating systems and device types, which are unique compared to single OS companies. We will be extending these solutions over time to comprehend all technologies, including cloud, CASB, container security, etc. So let's review the Insight solution. At the end of the day, what do we deliver to you? Prioritized campaigns requiring your attention, telling you, making an assessment of your countermeasures and your security posture against those trending campaigns. Not only that, but also not just the worries that your countermeasures won't hold, but we can actually tell you those proactive, prescriptive details of the configuration changes that you need to make to your security posture to protect yourself against those threats that are highly relevant to you. Combining three components of global intelligence from 1 million sensors with distinct risk assessment to help prioritize with specific guidance and actions uniquely allows the threat response progression to move really, really quickly. Threat and risk operations align to streamline response to avoid risk. This makes the most of your valuable cybersecurity resources. This threat readiness covers the entire attack cycle, before, during, after the attack. Particular threats noted here in this slide are, in Q4 2018, the McAfee ATR team discovered a new global campaign targeting nuclear defense, energy, and financial companies. This was tagged Operation Sharpshooter. The ongoing campaign leverages an in-memory implant to download and retrieve a second stage implant, which we call Rising Sun, for further exploitation. You can see some of our threat reports for details. Operation Personality Disorder campaign uses a malicious attachment or a URL contained in an email to drop the backdoor Cobalt strike. The phishing emails appear to come from legitimate financial organizations in Europe, and some of the malicious RTF files used in the attacks contain exploits for a range of vulnerabilities. You'll recognize some of these signatures that have been reused in current COVID scams, and we're going to talk about some of those again in a minute. Let's review some current campaign activity in the Middle East. Financial information and financial campaigns are dominating the threat landscape. The data shown here is over the first 3 months of this year, January, February, and March. We can see the consistent growth of the TrickBot banker, which is targeting financial institutions. The next most high-profile campaigns, in this case, are targeting mostly small businesses and consumers with phishing campaigns such as Turkey Dog and the small business COVID-19 scams. This is followed up by, again, the Thanos ransomware targeting financial institutions. Dropping some of the consumer information, let's review the sectorally related threats in different sectors in the Middle East. The large blue section in every bar here is related to the Thanos ransomware, which is rife across the sectors. The next most high-profile information on campaigns is with regard to small business COVID-19 scams. You can see where we have very little sectoral information, this yellow bar is really, really high, indicating small businesses are affected. Thereafter, we've got a TrickBot banker, again reinforcing that financial theme in the region. Moving on to a specific sector and a very high profile attack, we can see the Ragnar Locker ransomware attack, which has multiple entry points via RDP, email, and other entry points into your system. And we can see that it is affecting Saudi Arabia in the recent past. Looking at our friend, the Thanos ransomware, which we showed was highly prevalent in the region, we can see that we can outline numbers of different attacks in various countries over the previous few months. You can review our global prevalence map. You can see the presence of the attack in a similar vein to the United States and South America. We can see in the threat information provided by our ATR team the different IOCs that are relevant to the attack and some further information about how it works. So after that really interesting review of current threats in the Middle East, I'm going to show you a little bit about how this type of information is going to propagate into the Insights dashboard. Remember that what people seem to be really interested in is how protection actually works against specific campaigns. If a specific IOC has matched in your environment, where else maybe it's been seen in the world, that gives you that kind of global context of activity to be able to act within your own environment locally and to proactively target the configuration changes that you need to make. So I'm going to show you in the dashboard how you analyze that global context, how you make those changes on the devices where you need to make them, and how you update your configurations. So how does the dashboard flow? The first really important set of information that's directly relevant to you is with regard to that prioritization piece. You can see the first set of widgets is about campaigns. The campaigns that are trending in your sector or your geo and that are of high severity. You can see in the second widget, we see the number of campaigns that require your attention. I'm going to show you how that drills down a bit in the next slide. In the third widget, we can see an evaluation of an overall protection score that reflects the health of your organization relevant to the campaigns and the threats that are propagating in the field. The second question, remember, that you had was about how vulnerable you were to these threats. We show you that in that fourth box, your susceptibility to the propagating campaigns in the field. The very last widget addresses that part of the timeline after something might be hit or that it's live, where we can make targeted changes to devices with specific content updates. It tells you exactly the number of devices that you need to address. Prescribed, targeted, prescriptive changes. Let's review the whole dashboard itself and how all that campaign and threat level information interacts with your device ecosystem. Here's the dashboard. It's an interactive dashboard, and you click on various widgets, they'll immediately respond. The first piece that I want to draw your attention to is the campaigns dashboard underneath the widgets that I showed you on the previous slide. You'll notice that there are two options in this interactive dashboard. There's all campaigns. Note that all campaigns has 380 specific items that you can dig into, brought like any other threat intelligence platform into your dashboard. The important change here from McAfee MVISION Insights is that we have made 4 campaigns specifically relevant to you. We've done that prioritization. You can see 4 campaigns listed here. Operation X Hunt Cache Y200 is the top one there with the most devices relevant to your situation, the most devices at risk. We can then see another of intermediate level items that need to be dealt with. As the most important campaign requiring your attention, Operation X Hunt Cache Y200, we can take that item and pin it in a watch list on the right-hand side. This item is then marked as the most important thing that your staff need to keep an eye on in the foreseeable future until your configuration is covered and you're sure of your defense posture. Let's go back to these widgets at the top of the page, your org protection score and threats that you should prioritize and potential breaches. Firstly, let's talk about the protection score. The protection score is based on a combination of factors, including the severity of campaigns that are either affecting you or targeting your sector or your geo. Are you in the Middle East? Are you a bank? Are you in the energy or oil sector? It also is relevant to the detection prevalence of the campaign, either within your sector or your geo, if it's hit you already, or within your network, and a predictive assessment of how well your current posture will work or work against these campaigns. This score, it's calculated against your entire organization, its overall protection posture, and it can also be compared against other organizations that are similar to you. The dashboard also answers what threats you should prioritize and why. If you look at the second widget, those 4 campaigns, it shows you which one is of the highest severity. The third widget, do I have any potential breaches? Devices requiring isolation. Where are the holes in your current network with regard to these campaigns in the earlier widgets? The fourth widget tells you where your protections need improvement. And the fifth widget tells you what threats are propagated towards you but have not hit you yet. So items that may have hit other banks in the Middle East but that haven't hit you yet. The dashboard also answers questions of how the threat works. You see this nicely written summary from our advanced threat research team, particularly regard to the modus operandi of the attack vectors with regard to the threat. We can see exactly what IOCs were detected from this campaign in your environment. We can see relatively how you're affected compared to other people within your geo or your sector or generally. Your activity levels can be motivated by how active this campaign is globally and the countries that you can see on the map here around you. Then I promised that we were going to bring this global context to device level interaction. And you can see the number of devices there against the campaign requiring your attention, 8 devices. We can also predict whether you may have been breached. We can tell you whether we've already remediated this threat within the environment or whether the item detonated. We can then prescribe further actions that you can take to isolate a device from spreading further within your network. And we can prescribe content improvement that you can add to your endpoint system in order to protect all of your devices from the propagation of this threat in the future. Now let's look at how Insights prioritizes campaigns by industry, sector, and geography. So we were looking at a medical view, but we can change that to look at the financial sector. We can further interact with the dashboard to make a change from the USA, scrolling down, switching to Italy. The current sorting of the dashboard campaigns is with regard to that which has been most recently detected in your environment, but we can change that to the items that require the highest priority of investigation because they have the highest number of devices requiring isolation or that need additional DAT content coverage. Looking down through the campaigns shown on the dashboard, we can see how our infection rate compares against other companies in our specific medical sector. We can also see if we're in the USA, we can see how we compare against other companies in the USA with regard to infection. And you see still our own infection rate on the left-hand side. Let's do a bit further detail drilling into a campaign or a threat. We're going to scroll in detail through the campaign details. We can see some very high detail here with regard to the summary. We can see the relevance. This campaign, Operation X1 Cache Y200, is determined to be really urgent for you to deal with. It's urgent because your protection against this particular threat is really, really poor. Review the summary. Understand how the threat will work. What's its objective? Why is it looking to interact in your environment? Why might you be targeted in the field? Again, with regard to your prioritization, you can understand how the threat is spreading worldwide. Look at all the different countries that it has affected, called out not just on the map, but specifically by name. Also, various sectors affected are called out specifically by name. Even if it's not the primary sector affected, you may not be in that primary sector, but we may have observed this particular campaign having affected some customers and this will be reflected in the observed sector's view. Again, in the top right-hand side, reprising what you were shown on the campaign's overview on the previous page, is how we reflect against the other sectors and other countries and your percentage of impact. On the very bottom of the screen, you can see the hashes that were actually seen in your environment and isolated. The other useful piece are the associated IOCs that you may yet see, and that may help you understand whether the campaign is still active. I promised you that we would bring you prescriptive action and targeted intervention into your ecosystem from that global context. So we're going to drill down a little bit further right into the timeline and device level configuration. So here's the page for an organization's environment as it relates to that specific Cache Y200 threat that we've been showing over the previous pages. Those main dashboard modules are still there across the top, reflecting the overall structure and performance of your ecosystem as you interact with the device configurations. And we hope that as you improve your device coverage, that those scores along the top will change for the better. And you can see those timelines in widget 3 and 4. The detections timeline in the center of the dashboard shows you the number of devices affected across the timeline. We can see the details of the very specific types of devices that were affected. You can see the servers, you can see whether they were workstations. We can see the specific device related information as we scroll further up the page. The widgets on the bottom right-hand side give you the option to further change your configuration of your devices, to update your content, or to do further investigation. As those changes take place, the timeline bars of devices requiring attention in the middle of the dashboard will start to change and hopefully trend downwards as the number of changes that you have to make reduces. Really useful is the number of potential breaches that are still there to be dealt with. 14 detections are not resolved on 11 devices. This is the work that you've yet still to do. Drilling in further into a specific IOC that as yet you do not know this IOC is relevant to a particular campaign or not. So hopefully we will bring this global information on any campaign that this IOC is relevant to right into your dashboard. Searching for this particular campaign brings up your normal dashboard with the widgets across the top and an IOC view with IOC properties, IOC prevalence, and IOC incidence factors. We can see on the bottom right-hand side the timeline of the detection rate of this IOC globally. We can see all the particular properties of the IOC so that you might know whether it's been seen in your SIM, etc. Again, we can reprise the campaign level information that you've seen previously with regard to sector or geo prevalence. We can compare the prevalence of this IOC in different sectors such as medical, etc., or financial, and different countries, and our own organization. Importantly, it shows you what campaigns this IOC may be relevant to. This may prioritize you in further drilling into these campaigns and understanding how you might be protected against those campaigns from further spreading of this threat. So say, for example, we do find this IOC in our environment and we need to make changes in our environment. How do we go about interacting with the dashboard? Remember, you have 108 devices still requiring attention. You've protected 212 already, so you've reduced from your peak. How many breaches might you have had on how many devices? We give you the capability here in the dashboard to directly isolate those 11 devices that are outstanding. We give you the option with the button there to update the DATs on any remaining devices in your ecosystem to give you up-to-date, most recent coverage. That Ioc detection timeline, you can see again the number of devices and the specific device details over time from left to right. All devices that are affected can be shown on the bottom of the dashboard, and we can drill in, we can hit that investigate button, and we can see exactly what has been happening on each of those devices. In the scenario where everything is complete, the dashboard then shows that all your devices are protected and up to date. That history and timeline with regard to the threat remains visible, so you can understand how successful you've been in mitigating against this Ioc. And the status that you are protected is shown in the device level dashboard at the bottom of the screen. In summary, you can see how we have proactively ranked campaigns for investigation in your dashboard with regard to how active they are in the field, how active they are in your sector or geo, and how vulnerable you are to attack by this particular campaign. With regard to vulnerability, we have assessed your devices, your servers, your workstations, your general posture to understand how vulnerable you are to specific campaigns and included that in the ranking. Not only have we told you all the things that you need to worry about, we're now telling you the prescriptive targeted changes that you can make in isolating devices or updating the content on devices in order to maintain full coverage. So that's the dashboard. That finishes my demo, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some of the back-end reports that we've got and some further information to help your understanding of your dashboard that you can make from our website. We've recently released the McAfee Labs threat report in April 2021. This will bring you much greater detail on some of recent threats in the field. You can see one of the highlights of the threats report is that Powershell malware has increased 208% in Q4. This really aligns with some of the Thanos ransomware items that we've seen and that you've seen are active in the Middle East. You can see the rise of macOS malware, and you can see some stats with regard to the number of threats per minute, etc. There's some nice graphics in here. You can see the increase or decrease in various continents over the last numbers of quarters. You can see particularly that Europe and Asia have seen a real growth in campaign activity over the last number of months. I really encourage you to read this report. As detailed analysis of things like solar winds, etc., by Raj Samani, Christian Beek, and some of our really, really excellent threat experts. One really interesting link out of the threats report is the COVID-19 threats dashboard. You remember when I was talking to you earlier in the presentation that one of the biggest campaign threats in the landscape at the moment is regarding to small business scams. You can see here where we've been tracking all the hashes and the countries that have affected by COVID-19 scams in the last 12 to 15 months. Let's zoom in here on our map just a little bit more, and you can see that we've highlighted the number of detections that have been seen related to COVID for Saudi Arabia. We've highlighted the top countries with malicious detections, and you can drill in further into top verticals with malicious detections for COVID-19. Again, This timeline is very reminiscent of the type of information that is on your Insights dashboard. This is a very detailed daily timeline and chart of the number of malicious detections, the threat types, and the number of client devices affected. And you can see it's still very, very much increasing, despite the fact that the COVID situation is well over a year old. Let's go back to MVISION Insights, and you'll see from our website that we have a preview dashboard available. In this particular preview, I've taken some screenshots of some configurations there where I have selected UAE, I've selected the banking and financial industry, and we can see our friend there, the Thanos ransomware, is the most prolific piece of ransomware in the area and that sector in the last period of time. We can see some other prioritized threats as well. And just like in the Insights dashboard, in the preview, you can dig in a little bit further into this threat. We have made available a preview of that map that shows, you can see the UAE highlighted there in maroon in the bottom right-hand side of the map. You can see that threat severity is high. Our review by the ATR team of the description of the Thanos ransomware campaign, the knowledge base, we've got a link there, observed countries, where it's being seen, and you can see that it really is very highly prevalent, highly affected countries. You can see there Turkey, the US, Belgium, etc. We can see many sectors that it's affected, and we can see the prevalence in various over time. Let me encourage you to get out to the booth views and to order your own custom MVISION Insights report. We should be able to customize a demo relevant to your sector, your geo, and your organization. It's been a really great pleasure speaking to you. Really great telling you about our research, my research that I've brought to this product. It's been really great talking to you all. Thanks very much.